There we go. Welcome everybody. We've got quite a lot of items to get through this evening, so we'll see how quickly we can rush through them all. Do we have any apologies? I think we're all here, aren't we? Okay, item 2, any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other disclosable interests? None. Confirmation of the minutes. Are we happy that, Natalie?
Yeah, just an observation. I did request at the last meeting that the chairman sent a formal apology to the attendees of the full council meeting that had stayed until the end of the meeting, only to be told that the notice of motion wouldn't be discussed. But that wasn't minuted in the minutes of our last exec meeting. So hopefully it can be added.
Okay. Apart from that, any people happy with the minutes of the, apart from that exception? Yeah. And we vote to accept that? Yeah. Chair's announcements, there aren't any. Public participation. We have Chris Pinder, who's going to give us Malvern Town Football Club.
This one here. There you go. Right. Let's wait for the. Okay. Councillors and officers, thank you for your time today. I sit here before you not just as the chair of Malvern Town Football Club, but as someone who has witnessed firsthand how the club brings people together, strengthens our community, and enhances local pride. Since 1936, Malvern Town Football Club has been a pillar of this town's identity. As we approach our 90th anniversary in 2026, our focus is on the future, ensuring the club remains thriving, inclusive, and sustainable for generations to come. Our motto is making Malvern proud, and today I ask for your support to help us deliver a project that truly embodies that mission. A project that already builds on a strong foundation. Malvern Hills District Council, alongside the Football Foundation, have already invested over £1.2 million in a state-of-the-art 3G pitch and modern changing rooms, providing top-class facilities for players of all ages, abilities and backgrounds. Now it's time to complete the experience, ensuring that every visitor, whether a lifelong supporter or a first-time visitor from across the country, has an inclusive, safe and enjoyable match day at Malvern Town FC. This proposal focuses on 5 critical areas that will benefit the club and the wider community. Area 1 is a major design improvement to the car park that includes safety lighting, resurfacing of 51 spaces with 5 disabled parking bays, providing a direct, step-free route into the stadium, 2 electric vehicle charging points, and the creation of 33 additional overflow parking spaces to alleviate antisocial parking congestion on the surrounding roads at busy times. Area 2 is about accessibility and inclusivity, providing a fully accessible route from the car park to a raised, covered wheelchair-friendly viewing area with a full pitch 180-degree sightline. This is all in close proximity to accessible toilets and clubhouse facilities, ensuring that all supporters can enjoy the game equally. Area 3 is about spectator comfort and safety. A new covered terrace stand with a beautiful hills view offering shelter for 200 spectators and a stunning backdrop of the Malvern Hills. This will be the place for that Instagrammable photograph of the stadium. Plus additional covered areas for high footfall zones such as the clubhouse and kitchen entrances to provide better weather protection. Area 4 is improving the hospitality and community use, such as the addition of modern accessible bifold doors to create an open and welcoming clubhouse terrace, boosting the matchday experience and non-matchday revenue from private hires and community events. And finally, Area 5 is around environmental and financial stability. The new covered structures will support solar panels, reducing energy costs and reinforcing Malvern's green initiatives. This investment will help secure the club's long-term financial future, reducing reliance on external funding. But why does this all matter? This isn't just about football, it's about civic pride, economic sustainability, and a more connected community. Malvern Hills District Council, funding a major car park expansion, and the other areas that I've suggested, will ensure that every supporter, young or old, lifelong fan or newcomer, has a first-class experience at Malvern Town FC. We have a proven track record in delivering ambitious projects. We were instrumental in securing and implementing the £1.2 million investment in our current facilities, and we have secured the services of an experienced project manager to lead this initiative. We are confident in delivering on time, on budget, and to the highest standard. This is an opportunity to invest in something that delivers real value to Malvern, not just for football, but for the entire community. By supporting this project, you're backing inclusivity, sustainability, and long-term community engagement. We're not just asking for financial support, we're asking for your trust. Trust that Malvern Town FC will deliver on its promise and continue to be a source of pride for this town. Together we can build something that serves not just football fans, but all of Malvern. So let's make Malvern proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think if you've not been plugged into any of this, Malvern Town Football Club has had a serious run of success. They've been winning game after game after game, and every week there's a new win, 2-1 at the last minute. The other week there when I attended it. So I would like to say on behalf of the council, well done to the team, and we're keeping a close eye and hope that you actually achieve promotion. And thanks to everybody involved at Malvern Town Football Club. You're doing a great job pulling that community together and giving them something to hope and live for. Thank you. Next item is adoption of the Malvern Hills Landscape Management Plan. And that's Jeremy.
Thank you. Yes, just a bit of a quick aside. When my brother first came to visit me, when I first moved to Malvern about 12 years back, we went for a walk up the camp, British camp, and he's from Scotland, and he looked over the landscape around him, and he said, "Oh, I get it. This is England's green and pleasant land." And it's moments like that when we just remember what a beautiful place we actually live in, and it doesn't just happen. You know, there are lots of things that we do to make sure that we preserve the countryside that we have, that we improve the countryside that we have, and we've got to thank the Malvern Hills Conservators for doing that for their land. we've got to give ourselves a pat on the back for our reviews of the SWDP and the actions that we do to protect our own countryside and try and make sure that the development is in the right place. But the last area is the old AONB, who are looking after the Malvern Hills National Landscape. And as part of their remit, we need to approve a landscape management plan for them on a regular basis. So this latest one's been updated. I know John Rain's been involved with it. It's been updated to make us fit for purpose for the next 5 years. And one of the things I liked about it was to give us a vision for 2059 when this area, the AONB in this area, will be 100 years old. So I'm happy to recommend the adoption of the National Landscape Management Plan as in recommendation 2.1.
Have we got any comments on that?
Yeah, just to support what Jeremy has said, I think it's a great plan. The National Landscapes team do a fantastic job. I really like the connection between nature, climate, people and place. I think it's a fantastic vision. And obviously we're very lucky as a council to have such a nationally recognised landscape on our doorstep that obviously contributes significantly, I think, to our tourism strategy as well as our destination zero strategy. You know, from my perspective, I just hope they get the resources. Often they're dependent on government resources. The Sustainable Farming Initiative has just recently been cut, so I hope that will be reinstated and they get the resources they deserve in terms of both the landscape and the nature and the tourism aspect. So I fully support this plan.
Thank you, Mark. Natalie?
Yep, just to echo what Jeremy and Mark have said, and although I haven't been involved in the process, I can see that we've followed due process. We've conducted a public consultation and involved the relevant councillors, in this case John Rain and Paul Cumming. And I believe that members of the Environment PDP have been briefed and no concerns were raised at that point either. In my opinion, the overarching themes of nature, climate, people and place, and the detailed actions as to how they'll be protected, mitigate against and enhanced are the right ones, and I don't see any problems with the proposals at all. I'm sure other people might want to speak, but if you are looking for a seconder, I'm happy to second.
Okay, Jeremy, you're proposing, and Natalie, you're seconding. So we take that vote, please. Okay. Right, thank you. The next item is the Community Infrastructure Investment Plan. That's over to Jenny.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, members. I know we've got a jam-packed agenda, so I'll try and keep it brief, but I am quite excited to present this report to the Executive for hopefully endorsement this evening, and we've already heard from Chris Pinder in anticipation of what's put before you, which is a community infrastructure investment plan proposing an investment sum of £4 million overall to our communities to help them to build and grow and connect their various community centres, sports groups, parish councils and other infrastructure we have across the district. Just a quick thanks to the officers that have written the report. I'm sure you'll agree it's extremely comprehensive and detailed, and particularly Mark Hammond, big thanks. It can't have been easy having me as the new cabinet member at the end of November and being told to get this up and running as fast as possible and before you. It has been through the Policy Development Panel for Health and Wellbeing, and have had lots of members coming to talk to me about the opportunities this presents for us to get investment into our communities. It's about us meeting the aspirations, reaching parts of the district that may not have received the investment Malvern Hills has offered before, building that infrastructure, which is quite often a lifeline to our communities. And we do have indeed a project pipeline list, and you'll see that the report is asking us to prioritise Malvern Town Football Club because we know that they are very eager to go and shovel ready. But there are various projects out there that we hope to engage with and to support not only this year but for the next 3 years, and you'll see the lifetime of the plan is 25 to 28, because we do recognise that we are on a time limit now and we must work at pace to support communities. So that's really just a very broad level view of what it's about and why we're doing it. But I'm very keen to see if we have any questions, and I know officers are in the room and can certainly help answer any.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted by this report. It's something I've been asking for several exec meetings now. My compliments to Councillor Watkins for getting this report out, and of course to the officers, to Jen, and particularly to Mark Hammond. I know from past experience that Mark will have been an enormous positive influence on this, so thank you to him. I'm particularly delighted to see the item in the appendix for Lysinton, for the football facilities there. It's great to see something that's prioritising the rural communities rather than purely the Malvern and other urban areas. So I'm more than happy, if no one else is wishing to second this. And let's get on with it as fast as possible before someone takes all our money here from us.
And Natalie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Like Peter, I really welcome this report, and developing legacies and introducing a methodology for asset transfers is more important now than ever as we wobble on the edge of LGR. So really pleased to see it coming forward with such detail as well. I've got a general question, and I hope I know what the answer is, but I need to ask it. So has an ABCD approach been utilised? So have we spoken to all of these community organisations or had conversations with them about these plans, so that they're buying in to these initiatives and plans right from the start, and that the initiatives are likely to be more sustainable than if we say, we're doing this to you, okay? So that's my question.
Okay. Mark, can we get your view on, your comment on that, or answer to that?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Natalie. Yes, we've certainly been engaged with certainly the assets that we own as a district council, and in terms of the community assets, we are aware of quite a swell of demand across various parishes, across various communities. That will obviously form part of the community grant scheme element of the plan. So when that becomes live and the expression of interest is live, more work will be done with those communities to support them through the expression of interest. But yeah, it's very much going to be led by a needs assessment, by analysis. It's going to be community led.
Thank you. That's what I hope the answer would be, having been at the forefront of ABCD for a good few years.
Jeremy.
Thank you. I mean, it was just to comment really. I mean, when John and I took over as leader and deputy leader, we had a combined group meeting where we said, you know, one of the challenges of being a district councillor is, what is your legacy? You know, we've got some councillors who've been on this council for a long time, and the intention was always to say, and this is what we've done, and this is what we're leaving behind. It's been a little bit fortuitous that the government review has meant that we don't need to hold extra reserves to cover future potential cuts, because we see there is light at the end of the tunnel as far as district council is concerned. But the desire here is very much, and I think it's a desire of all councillors, that we want to give something back to our communities while we still can. So this is about, you know, making something useful of what we have and the time that we have left, and delivering for our communities. I just want to make that point.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Mark.
Yeah, likewise, I very much welcome this. I just want to ask a question. So the Malvern Hills District Council Community Facility Legacy Fund grant, I think that's what it's called. Obviously, there's some flexibility within this. It's great to see some identified capital projects, such as the football club. In terms of the legacy grant fund, I wonder if I could just have a little bit more information on the decision-making process. I understand that ward councillors, where projects are related to projects within a particular ward, will be involved or consulted. Maybe just a little bit more information around how that practically will run would be useful.
Yep, so I'm happy to take that one. Thank you, Mark. We will be starting to pull together the two-stage process. So as we've set out in the report, the expression of interest will allow us to not put too much pressure on communities to have to pull together really full, substantial bids where actually they may be not ones that are going to go forward, but we can do that first start and sift, and we'll be pulling together the plans for that and taking that to the next Health and Wellbeing Policy Development Panel along with the process. So the expectation is that the Policy Development Panel will help to look at those EOIs and to identify those that will be worked up further, obviously working with the ward member as well to support that process. And then those recommendations from Policy Development Panel will come back to Executive Committee for final decision on allocation of grant.
Thank you, Jen. And I like the kind of flexibility, I think, the responsiveness of this, as well as the kind of identified, capital projects. So thanks, Jen.
Mark.
Thank you. I guess just to add to that, I think just in terms of that flexibility, that fluidity, once we've received the expressions of interest, what we'll be able to do is look at the best way of financing those projects. So it might be that some of those communities have got some Section 106 funding, for instance, that we're already sitting on. So in examples like that, we might be able to say, well, actually, we could fund this project through Section 106, which will then allow the grant scheme funding pot to go further within other communities that perhaps haven't got Section 106. So I think that flexibility is really important, and we'll certainly be building that in with the process.
Okay, Natalie.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think we all appreciate the impact that early intervention can have in various areas of people's lives. I wonder how you've cracked evidence. It's known as evidencing the zero. So it's sort of projecting forward about how much money might be saved if we intervene early in someone's life so they don't have to rely on services later down the line. And if you have cracked that, please can you share it with other partner organisations, because I think it's known as something that is incredibly difficult to do, and it's really important when you're looking at trying to get funding for different services. For example, sexual violence and domestic violence. It's really hard for them to show that if someone is seen sooner in their life, the cost to the taxpayer, the cost to services around, such as mental health services, and actually the fact that their life may be saved is really hard to demonstrate. So please share how you've done that if you've been able to do it. And then just finally from me, a plea to Chris, please can you install some bike parking as well so I don't have to attach my bike to the nearest immovable object when I come. Thanks.
Okay, have you got your bike with you this time?
Not today.
Dean.
Thank you. Just a question, actually. When's this expression of interest going live?
Oh, no, there we go. We're looking for the expression of interest to be live at some point in April, so quite a quick turnaround. As Jen said, we'll be working with the Policy Development Panel to sort of finalise and get that ready. But yeah, certainly early to mid-April is our aspirations, so trying to work at pace.
Thank you for that. Saved me some earache from one of my parish councils.
Okay, we're all done. You're proposing acceptance of this?
Yes, I am, and I believe Councillor Watley has offered himself as my seconder, so thank you very much.
Shall we take the vote? Okay, that's unanimous. Right, the next item is the weekly household food waste collection. And that's Jeremy.
Thank you. So I think we all know this has been coming. So the government is requiring councils to collect household waste. So the proposal before you in the document is that we deliver this in-house. Now, one of the reasons for doing that is, well, there's two primary reasons. The first one is that our current waste collection service, in my opinion, is second to none. I've lived in different districts and different boroughs where a lot of this has been outsourced to private firms, and I've had bins left that were overfull, bins left that were in the wrong place, etc., etc. And I really, you know, in the 12 years that I lived in Malvern Hills district, I can't fault our waste collection people. So if I want somebody to do a food recycling service properly, I'm quite happy to trust our resources to do that. But the second element is, again, we've touched on it, the potential demise of the district council. What we want to do is make sure that the service that we operate currently continues after this council no longer exists. And the only way to do that is to make sure that it's properly set up, properly funded, and delivers correctly. So and I'm scrolling through my papers. I've foolishly gone to a different set of papers to get the recommendations, but there's a lot of recommendations here. Basically saying that we are going to set up the domestic food waste as POP 2.1.1, provide the right to authorise the Director of the Economy and Environment to buy the number of caddies, to buy the correct vans to collect the waste within the budget that's set out by the grant from the UK government. Point 5 gives a forecast of what the annual cost of this is likely to be, but it requires us to come back and validate when we get the final award from the government on what the award will be to cover these increased costs. So on that basis, I'm happy to recommend 2.1 points 1 to 6.
Neville.
Reading through this report, I note that the present waste collection services are covering a number of districts which may not exist after the devolution proposals go through. Have we considered how this might be handled?
Yes. I think, I can't remember if it was the last exec, we had a closed session which talked about other acquisitions that the council would make to ensure that this service could be delivered appropriately. So whilst we can't predetermine what the combined authority may do or the single layer authority may do in the future, what we're trying to do is to ensure that the service delivered from the Malvern Hills depot is in the best possible condition to enable it to be utilised by the unitary authority if and when that comes in. So we can't predetermine what they're going to do, but we just want to make sure that we're in the best possible position. That means it's effectively a no-brainer that as far as this district is concerned, it continues to use the resources and the infrastructure that we've set up.
Just to add to that, I think to foreshadow the debate later, it doesn't really matter whether there's a single unitary or two unitaries. Everybody's bin will still need to be collected on a regular basis, and I don't see there being anything than our own depot to do that in whichever model comes forward. So I think that the service we're setting up is relevant for a good number of years, well beyond the setting up of a unitary.
Peter first and then Jules.
Thank you, Chair. We clearly have no choice on this. The previous government ordained it and it's being carried on. Couple of questions, though, for clarity. First, do we have any indications that Westminster is going to do the bulk purchase of all bulk purchases, and in terms of buying lots of plastic caddies, presumably from the Far East, to a standard design and getting a standard price for all authorities, or is it the Wild West, as one usually gets with these schemes? And second, there's a lot of detail in here, but I don't see anything regarding the CO2 implications of any of this, which would, you might just think was the point of the whole thing. So is there going to be some evaluation of the outcome of this, positive, negative or neutral, in terms of emissions from those several zillion plastic containers, the new lorries and what have you, and then possibly a positive effect from the food? Sorry, long question, but
I might go to the officer at one point, but two points I would say. Firstly, from a bulk purchase perspective, there are a lot of councils who already do food waste. So I don't know. The officer will tell me if there is a government initiative. I'd be surprised if there was one. As far as the evaluation of the environmental impact, the environmental impact of food waste is huge. Let's not underestimate that. It is insane that we are wasting in the UK as much food as we do. So the introduction of there is two purposes in my view for the introduction of the legislation. The first one is to recycle that food waste. Now I accept that lots of people will already have their own composting bins and will be doing a lot of their own recycling. They can't do it with all food waste, which we can do in this circumstance, because you don't want to put meat onto a compost, for example. But I think the other value is for people to appreciate and understand just how much food they are wasting. If we're giving people caddies that are meaning that they should be measuring out and identifying how much food they're wasting, that will actually hopefully educate our people better into reducing the purchasing of the food in the first instance, and therefore for me the bigger CO2 impact is why are we getting strawberries in January? That's the real question. Why aren't we eating seasonally? But I will throw over to Ian, the officer, to come back particularly on the first point, and if he wants to add anything on the second.
Sorry to disappoint you, but there isn't a national bulk buying scheme, and I have to be honest, even if there were, I'm not sure I'd recommend to you that we used it. I'd much rather control those sort of things myself. In terms of the carbon reduction, you would expect, wouldn't you, that when the policy was first thought of, somebody did that work. I've not seen any evidence of that. What I do suggest is, though, that this policy probably makes sense where landfill is the option for food waste. We have energy from waste here, so it's not as clear-cut as it would be in a landfill area.
Okay, Jules?
Coming on? Oh, that's it better. Yes, so a couple of things, part of which has already been said actually, but firstly, I wholeheartedly support us keeping the service in-house. I know that we had some debate at some time about whether we went with a council service or whether we did a joint service, a bit like Ubico in Gloucestershire, etc. So I'm really pleased that this is in-house. I also wanted to pick up the point about the carbon neutrality of it, and only this last few days I've had a conversation with a resident who asked, about food waste collection. I said, oh, good, news, it's happening. But always behind this, I think we have to still back this up with a campaign about not buying too much food and not wasting too much food. Because my worry about food waste collection is that actually it will just encourage people to buy more food and just chuck it in a bin. So I think there is a quid pro quo to this, really. And I think we have to see this alongside our own educational work that we've been doing through the environment panel and things. Somebody was astounded when I told them a few days ago about how much the average household wastes in food, how much money it costs them. A very small point, but it's an important one, is a lot of houses and households in Malvern particularly, but across the district, can't actually have bins, and I noticed there was a lot of reference to bins. So we have to have bags. I understand from what I've seen in other parts of the country that the food caddy is a smaller caddy, so it won't cause the same sort of problem. So as long as that's been taken into account, because I know, for example, where I live, I've got 13 steps to go up if I had to take bins. No, I'd have more than that actually. I'd have more like 30 steps to go up. So, you know, is it going to be achievable to do this with the size of caddy that people can actually carry? That's sort of a thing that I didn't see in the report. So thank you.
Ian, you want to come on that?
I think you can put your mind at rest that we'll not be asking people to put food waste in bags. Dread to think the mess that would cause. The vehicles are smaller vehicles, so they will have access to areas where currently we couldn't access, and where we'd be asking residents to use the bags instead. But there will be some areas, Jules, I'm sure, where we can't provide a service, but there will be few and far between. I think we need to design the service for the majority.
To be honest, I'll be using my compost bins and my wormeries, and I don't eat meat.
I think Natalie, you wanted to come in earlier.
Yeah, thanks. A few of my questions have already been asked. But just to pick up on the point about people using sack steel, there's quite a big percentage of our population that do that. And I know that we'll be using a smaller vehicle, which is good. But can we look at other community alternatives like community composting or wormeries or things like that alongside this as a solution? So that's one of my questions. I also note that, and I agree that in-house is the best way to go at this point. But I note that that decision could be changed at any point. So I wonder what information would need to come forward to make us revisit that. Would it be the fact that customer satisfaction drops off? I noticed that it's really high at the moment. So would that be something that made us look at sort of outsourcing things? So yeah, what would need to happen for us to reconsider that? And then I'll pause and maybe ask a couple if no one else does.
I mean, yeah, we will absolutely look at all options. I think one of the challenges around community wormeries and community composting is exampled by the challenge we have in getting people to use recycling bins properly. There are a small number of people out there who have no respect for the efforts that people are making in terms of recycling and composting, and contamination can cause significant problems. So it's something we'd have to look at in the context of the balance. In terms of revisiting the decision, as a prudent council, we would have to do that on a regular basis to demonstrate we are considering value for money. So it's something that will be done on an ongoing basis as well. But I'm happy for Ian to add anything.
No, just on the review, yes, of course, we would always need to make sure we're delivering high quality services. What I would suggest is, though, that any change from in-house to a contractor delivered service is likely to be made on the basis of what the wider unitary wishes to do and whether the wider unitary wishes to introduce a contracted out service. So it's unlikely to be just part of that unitary doing it and part of it not.
Yeah, very briefly. Again, I support this, taking it in-house. It all makes total sense. Just to re-emphasise from my perspective the importance of the waste hierarchy and the reduction element of this. There was, I think, in previous council already approval for the kind of building on the food savvy point, and to Jeremy's point, that that was really stressing the potential to save Worcestershire households. I think it's £580, £600 a month. So there's an economic as well as a kind of sustainability benefit here. Just putting my professional consultancy hat on, because I deal with food and agricultural systems in my professional career, but from a food systems perspective, I think food waste contributes about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. I would too be interested to see the calculations here, but certainly I think the biggest benefit is reduction in food waste going to landfill and the methane created, because it has a global warming potential which is 100 times more than carbon dioxide, for example. So I think there are multiple benefits, but I think the importance of the educational and awareness point is really crucial to run alongside this, not just terms of reduction of waste, but what sort of food waste, should go into those caddies, how it should be handled, etc., etc. There's an educational piece behind that. I think that's going to be key to the success of this.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. David, I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jeremy. I don't know, did you propose this? Did you? I would like to second it, as nobody has so far as I'm aware. I did write a series of 9 questions to Ian and had some very good answers back, one of which may interest you. The private companies at present are using 1,100 litre bins for general waste, but they're having great problems in moving them because they're too heavy. And we are, I believe, going to be using 180 litre bins for commercial food waste collection, which is a much better idea. And of course, we've already got, I think, £80,000 in the allocated for publicity on this. I think it's 80,000. 75. Oh, I won't far out. We might get to 80 then, yeah. So, you know, very pleased with that. The only thing that I'm a bit disappointed is that there's nothing in there about helping residents to buy a compost bin. Worcester County Council every now and again do a contract with distributors to provide cheap compost bins, and I think quite a lot of people would be interested if that was done within the Malvern Hills district. So just a point, possible question. Thank you, but happy to second.
Natalie.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick points. So on the risk assessment, which I think is Appendix 4, maybe? Yeah. It does mention that recruiting drivers is regarded as quite high risk, and I appreciate that we'll be looking for drivers at the same time as a lot of other authorities as well. You've mentioned that you're going to be asking the depot crew or other crew whether they might be willing to be trained as drivers. So my first question is, when is that conversation likely to be had with the other crew? And then secondly, I can't see where it mentions it now, but I think I read that it mentions that we could trial the operation rather than having a full-scale rollout. But I can't find that bit now, so I might have dreamt it, how exciting my dreams are. So if I have read that correctly, when will the firm decision be made about whether it will be a trial rather than a full-scale rollout? Thank you.
We're not recommending as part of this paper that we do a trial. It was just identified as a potential way of introducing it, but that's not the proposal here. In terms of when do we speak about training our existing staff, conversations already started, and there are a goodly number of people down at the depot who are very interested in becoming HGV drivers. So we'll support them through that process.
Right, let's go to the vote. We've got a seconder, but a proposer and a seconder. We'll go straight to the vote.
That's unanimous.
Yeah, that's unanimous. The next item is the new council plan. So this is the annual renewal and refresh of our council plan. I think you've noticed that we've changed the name from the 5-year plan to the council plan, but we're not going to have 5 years. I suppose it makes some sense. So we've got the proposed actions. You've got the list there in Appendix 1. We had a look at this at ONS, and it was everybody was happy with it. No material changes. There's one new objective in the environmental crime section, as some short-term actions have been completed and removed, and some are tweaked and extended, reflecting whatever our priorities are. There's some new, this is all to be monitored through the quarterly progress reports. So we're looking at that plan, we're reviewing it. So I think it's probably open it up if anyone wants to make any comments or questions about it. Natalie.
Just picking up on what you said about us not being here in 5 years' time, I've noticed that some of the completion targets actually go up to 2050 in this plan, and quite a few are actually 2030. So is it appropriate to still have those dates in here when we won't be here to evaluate whether they've been completed at that point? Certainly not in 2050 anyway, but several of them are 2030 and one is 2050. So does something need to be done about that?
Yeah, I think this is something that we had in the previous plan as well. We had dates that were beyond the 5-year period.
We won't be here.
Yeah, but they're an ambition. It states what our ambition is. So I think, to me, it seems appropriate that we keep that idea that there is something that is not just in the immediate, but we've got a longer term view as well.
I was just going to add to that, really, from what Natalie said. I mean, the other side of that is that it's worth having, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's worth having some of those longer targets in, so that actually when we do become something else, we've actually got parts of our council plan that we can actually say, look, this is what we want to deliver. You know, if it's too short a time scale, then somebody else could say, oh, well, we're going to throw all that away. You haven't got any plans, so start again. So it's just a slightly counter argument to you, Nat, sorry.
No, you don't have to apologise.
I think we're referring to the Destination Zero targets, and I think we
Not
was
just those.
right. But there are two that are from Destination Zero, and that's a council policy that will carry on, hopefully beyond 2028. But it's certainly a journey, isn't it? And we're monitoring progress against that longer term target.
Yeah, you're right, most, but there's a tourism one of 2030 as well and things like that. So they are dotted about.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. All good aspirational stuff here, but as always, objectives and targets are only good if they can be measured. I'm curious as to how items 5, 8 and 9 are going to be measured. I don't expect an immediate response to that. I'm flagging them now. And with my full geek head on, I'm a bit curious on item 25, which is ensuring that we have enough EV charging capacity, which refers only to National Grid. My understanding, and I'm just looking at the electrical supply map for the area at the moment, is that the constraints are at Western Power Distribution's level rather than this National Grid. So we might wish to talk to them as well, since they're the people who actually control what you can plug in. Just a suggestion.
Okay. On that particular point, we had talked to Western Power Distribution some time back, a couple of years back.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman. Aren't Western Power now
Well, yeah,
known as National Grid?
That's the point.
Yeah.
So we have talked to them, but since then they've actually been taken over by National Grid. So National Grid are the owners of Western Power Distribution, and previously there was a Western Power Distribution business plan, a 5-year business plan. That is now actually within the National Grid framework, as I understand it. So that's why that's written the way it is.
Stand corrected, Chair. I wasn't aware of that, and I apologise.
Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to give a broad answer to the points about 5, 8 and 9, I believe. Like all portfolio holders, we'll be having an action plan that sits beneath this as a document, and something that I'll be looking to share with the PDP and to reflect on in overview and scrutiny. There is already a lot of work going along in these areas, so some of those actions and targets are already existing, and then there's work that we want to do which is more fluid and being led by both residents, youth organisations and individuals that we're working with. So we'll be able to add to that and to be able to report back what that looks like. So I hope that gives you an idea. We do have a framework, we will have an action plan, but there is some fluidity as we recognise that in an asset-based approach we can't necessarily dictate what the targets are and what the outcomes will be.
Claire.
Yeah, just picking up on that point, but in relation to priority 3, and there's already been quite a significant amount of work being done by Amanda and Rob and the team on things like the Cut It Out sessions to raise awareness of domestic abuse and domestic violence. But my question is, what are the strategies that are underpinning that priority itself? Are we looking to develop specific strategies to end violence against women and girls, and to look at domestic violence? Or so, yeah, what's happening with that area? Because I'm not aware that we do have specific strategies on that at the moment.
So I guess it's about identified need. We certainly know that we're working with residents impacted, whether that's coming through our housing services or working with our partners. And it's about identifying what those needs are and making sure that we're tailoring our services accordingly. There's an element around equipping our communities and that legacy piece around upskilling in terms of education and training, and working with community organisations and businesses. So you mentioned the Cut It Out, which is a great example. You know, how we can look to expand that, how we can work with our young people to understand the issues and how they see them from their perspectives. So there's a whole lot of work that we're doing. But like I say, I can give some kind of, you know, direct outcomes that we might be able to achieve. But we're very keen to explore a lot of these conversations through the various forums that I've just mentioned. And of course, work with members as we go through the council year, working whether it's overview and scrutiny or the policy development panel, to get some of those best practice ideas and conversations going. So I hope that answers your question, but very much welcome your input.
Oops. Jeremy, did you want to come in?
Just really to pick up, I mean, what we were trying to do, back to Councillor Watley's comments, was to try and come up with some specific things where we think we could make a difference. And the National Grid is a good example where, you know, it doesn't matter how many charging points we put in, if there isn't enough electricity reaching Malvern to get them to work. So the idea here was to try and focus on doing a couple of big things with some partners to try and make a real difference going forward. So yeah, it's building on the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years, but then trying to come up with some objectives that we can actually deliver on in the next 2 to 3 that leave the place a better place.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I don't want to leave this particular point without raising priority 28. And as a former resident of Tenbury Wells, it's something that is really concerning to me. And we know that the Environment Agency have abandoned plans for the flood defences that could lead to the town facing existential threat. And according to a report in The Guardian in December last year, there's a threat that it could be the first Worcestershire town abandoned over climate change, which is something to be really concerned about. Catastrophically, it's been flooded 7 times in 4 years, and I've certainly been around to witness that and help with the clean-up afterwards. And flood peaks are projected to increase by a median of 20% this decade. Residents and business owners feel like they're on the edge of a precipice every time there's significant rainfall. And as one resident said, we need help really quickly. It's like we're marooned on an island and everyone's forgotten about us. So my question is, what more can we do? I think we've got to really start thinking outside the box here, and I'm a bit concerned that supporting flood alleviation schemes that aren't going to be happening and lobbying the government just isn't enough and isn't quick enough. So I would like to recommend that there's a task and finish group set up, if possible, to look at this particular issue, and that could involve perhaps Councillor Leslie Bruton, whose knowledge and expertise is second to none. So yeah, that's just an idea, because I think we need to move quick and move smart.
I think we've got a task and finish group, haven't we? Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Jenny.
I wasn't indicating to come in, sorry, John.
Okay.
Just to clarify for the committee that the EA hasn't abandoned the scheme. Technically, it doesn't have sufficient funding to proceed in this funding round, so it's not abandoned. It's just not going to proceed this side of, I guess, April 2026. So it's still there, and it's still a role for this council and others to continue to lobby for that scheme. In the meantime, there's going to be property level protection and natural flood management, which is immediate and can happen and will have hopefully some impact now. But longer term, the scheme isn't abandoned; it's still there, just can't proceed right now.
Just a quick point, I can only see costs increasing, so I don't see the likelihood of it coming back anytime soon. But I welcome the news that there's a task and finish group going to be set up. I really do hope that you involve Leslie, though.
for you, Chairman. The Task and Finish Group is an overview and scrutiny group, and I'll talk to the Chairman about whether or not we invite Councillor Bruton to future meetings.
So, Leader, you've proposed this item. I haven't noted who seconded it. So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Next is the UK Share Prosperity and Rural England Prosperity Fund. And that's Douglas is going to take us through that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A report brought to Executive regarding the UK Shared Prosperity Rural England Prosperity Fund updates. The recommendations are listed at 2, but basically this is an update to Council. We're requesting approval for £250,000 budget to be allocated in this 25-26 rural fund year. We're asking the committee to update the progress that's made to date. The committee approves a list of projects identified in Appendix 2, which is sort of blue listing in the report. And delegate authority to the Director of Economy Environment in consultation with the portfolio holder, with responsibility for economic development and tourism to finalise the contractual arrangements of their implications and implementation. We're lucky to have this £250,000 funding budget allocated for the Malvern Hills Rural Fund. We're asking committee to delegate authority for approval of grants of up to £10,000 in consultation, and above £10,000 they will be considered by the Executive Committee in recommendation from the Economy Panel. This is a very useful and positive project, injection of cash. It helps a lot of projects that are going along. Things to do with careers boost, skills boost, the sort of encouragement of active travel, the encouragement of business support programs. It's a wide and diverse program, and I recommend it to Council. Thank you.
Anybody wishing to speak on this or second it? Jeremy second it.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. I mean, so the fund, I think, did a lot of good over the last couple of years. We were unfortunate in that we weren't getting the same level of funding from government. So we're basically asking if this council can allocate an additional 250k into the funding to keep that going and provide a real lifeline for our rural economy. So yeah, it's a positive action of the district council stepping in and making up some of the shortfall and delivering some good outcomes, hopefully, for our rural businesses. Happy to second it.
It's uncommon that Jeremy and I agree on things, but actually I do think it is necessary for us to step in as a local council, because the government have let us down again as a rural authority and pulled the plug entirely on one of the pots of funding and reduced the other amount significantly. So what other option do we have, really? Our rural communities matter, but we're quite literally having to self-fund, and that's a shocking state of affairs, really. So I've got absolutely no problem at all in seconding that we allocate that amount of funding to support it. What I couldn't see in the report was detail on the REPF initiative in the past, the spending on that and the impact that had. I've seen lots of the UK SPF detail, and I know that we've made some really positive impacts on businesses and organisations with that. So what types of thing is the REPF, or am I just getting that completely mixed up and they're the same thing?
Yeah, I think.
So recommendation 2.3 there refers to a replacement programme, essentially, for the REPF that we ran for the last 2 years. What I would say though is in the last few days, in fact you can tell because it's not referenced in the report, government have announced that they will fund REPF again for 25-26, but they have not indicated how much money they are going to contribute towards it. So what I suggest is that we go with the recommendation for the 250,000, and as and when we know what the allocation is, we'll know what, if any, we need to top up to bring it back to that level.
Thank you. Hot off the press information there. Well done. Yeah, that all sounds sensible to me. And I do welcome the funding because we need it. So there's just a couple of quick questions around Appendix 1. And it mentions that the active travel officer and the infrastructure projects associated with that role, funding is coming from elsewhere for that rather than the UK SPF going forward. And also in terms of the work to support community measures to address the cost of living crisis. So I was just wondering where the funding is coming from for those two initiatives and is it sustainable?
Yep, that's coming from the community services budget, so that's being managed via Amanda Smith's team.
Okay, can we go to the vote?
So we have a proposer and a seconder, so all those in favour, please. So that's unanimous.
Thank you, Misha. Next item, mandatory safeguarding training for Hackney Carriage and private hire licence holders, consultation responses. David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I believe that Niall was at the back early on. Still is. It's all right, I only got two eyes and they poked me forwards. Sorry about that. I'll come in first if I can. I did have some queries about this and wrote to Niall about it. First one was to do with if somebody applied for a licence in March of this year, i.e. now, their licence would be granted and be valid until 2028. So they wouldn't have to do any mandatory training. But there is a small section in here that is now in yellow, which is on page 209, which changes this, and I'm very pleased about that. So with the effect from the 1st of April, each time a licence holder renews their licence, they must undertake safeguard training. So that's a very positive step. The only thing I'm not that happy about, but there's nothing I can do about it, and as I say, I've spoken to Niall about it, and that is having HGV drivers that are also driving taxis. And that does frighten me a little. But I'll pass you over to Niall, who may be able to give us some update on that and anything else he thinks is fit. But I'd like to propose this as stated in the document.
Any comments? You want to say something now?
Other than the report, as Councillor Harrison has pointed out, this is a follow-up report with the consultation responses. There is clear and strong support for the introduction of mandatory safeguarding training for our licensed drivers from the people we consulted, and even from the drivers themselves, which is unusual. So really, it's whether anybody has any questions or anything that needs clarifying before we go to the recommendation, Chair, if that's okay.
Natalie.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've all heard the saying, haven't we? Safeguarding's everyone's business. So I absolutely welcome the recommendations in this report. But I've got a few practical questions, Niall, if that's okay. So it's what form does the training take? Is it in-person training? Is it online training? Does it have to be completed in one go? Or if it's online, is it modules that you can start and go back to? Will it be available in other languages other than English? how will we know that they've all completed the training, and what can we do if they don't, or if they refuse to? I'm assuming we revoke licences, and how long would that take? Thank you.
Yes, so the training is in person. In fact, we had a training session earlier today up here at Wild Forest House. We get a trainer in, excuse me, and the drivers sit there and they're trained on certain elements of safeguarding, such as identifying safeguarding issues, county lines, how to report, all of those sort of things that people really need to know when they're in their vehicles driving around when these sort of issues arise. With regards to the other languages, we haven't offered it in other languages. There's an expectation that drivers should be able to communicate in English. So we haven't gone as far as to offer the course in different languages at this stage. I mean, should it become an issue in the future, we may look at it, but really there is an expectation that certainly conversational English is expected with our drivers at all times. And the consequences, yes, that it becomes policy. They have to undertake training in order to maintain their licences. So should they fail to do the training at some point, they will be presented to the council for consideration as to whether they continue to be a fit and proper persons. Now, the fit and proper persons is the test that we put in place for all of our licensed drivers. So yes, there are consequences if they fail to take the training.
Are we getting anybody commenting? Douglas.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't know if anybody seconded this. I'm quite happy to second it. A comment about HGV drivers. Okay. As an ex-HGV driver and being part of a business that employs 3, the trucks will not move off the yard if they're not 100% right. And they follow the rules rigidly. One's a Lithuanian who is able to mend a diesel engine with a matchbox. The other one's Polish, and if anybody sticks to the rules that he does, I would have no hesitation in having them cart my children around, because not only do they protect the vehicle, protect the cargo, protect the reputation of the firm, protect themselves, I'm sure they would protect the passengers too. So I don't think there would be, generally speaking, HGV drivers have a very high regard for the protection of themselves and the users of the road. And when it goes wrong, we usually hear about it in a big way. But anyway, that's another matter, and I'm quite happy to second the report. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour, please raise your cards. So that's unanimous.
Right, the next item is David again on pavement licensing, the Business and Planning Act 2020 consultation responses.
Thank you very much. This has again been through a full consultation. This is obviously the result of it. I have no problems in recommending the 2 items here, 2.1 and 2.2, regarding the draft proposal, and I don't have any questions with it. We didn't have any earlier on when we had a pre-meeting to sort of discuss this and see if there was any problems, and Niall was at that as well. So I'll hand over to Niall, see if he's got any questions, or anybody got any questions that they wish to ask of him.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, yes, as just explained, it's a follow-on report to bring back the consultation responses for consideration before the policy is adopted, and the policy is attached to your report in its entirety, and it's how the council is going to approach its function in relation to pavement licensing, basically the placing of furniture on the street outside of hospitality businesses. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, councillors, so over to you, Chair.
Natalie.
Thanks. Thanks, Niall. I think the difference this time is that we've had a response to the consultation from Guide Dogs. So, I mean, I don't have any problems with what's in the report at all, as long as we're confident that we've taken on board the comments made by that organisation about people with a visual impairment and their assistance animals.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, yes, as just explained, it's a follow-on report to bring back the consultation responses for consideration before the policy is adopted, and the policy is attached to your report in its entirety, and it's how the council is going to approach its function in relation to pavement licensing, basically the placing of furniture on the street outside of hospitality businesses. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, councillors, so over to you, Chair. Yes, we have. Basically, they were, well, in their response, they were making sure that we'd followed the guidelines which have been published by government in relation to persons or people with disabilities. And we have, and our policy meets those guidelines. It was drafted in a way so that it did meet those guidelines. And I'm glad that they responded, because it shows that they're actually looking at the consultation and taking the time to respond to something which is very important. The good thing with this scheme is that there is the facility to review licences should they cause a problem. So if you receive complaints from members of the public, so if people with visual impairments are having problems with street furniture at particular premises, they can be reviewed and they can be looked at, they can be amended, and the ultimate sanction is the permissions can be taken away. It's a drastic step, obviously, but it is there in case issues arise.
So do we have a seconder for this item, please? Okay. No, he seconded the item 11. Okay, so all those in favour? Okay, that's carried.
Okay, we come to the review of the polling districts. Polling places and polling stations. So could I get Andy to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully just a report as much as a tidying up exercise as anything else. The biggest concern in terms of the two biggest concerns in terms of running any election is the one to balance the accessibility of our polling stations for people who want to vote, and the second is that I can adequately staff them, which has become an increasing issue over the years. You go back 10 years ago, there were no such things as identity had to be shown at polling stations, and it has fundamentally really altered the role of presiding officer and the polling clerks. So what's in front of you tonight really is just to largely wash up what we've already put in place for the elections in terms of moving some of our polling stations around. We still have 65 polling stations, which is, if you compare us to, say, Wyre Forest, who are also a semi-rural, semi-urban council, have around 12 to 14 polling stations. You'll see how many we've really got. But we've been out to consultation. I think I'm right in saying we had 4 respondents, so not a huge number. As I've said, the most important thing is to run a good election, and timely decision on where we place our polling stations is perhaps the most important thing. What we don't want to be in a situation of is me having to make last-minute decisions to move or change polling stations because either I can't staff them or because the venue becomes unsuitable. That's something I don't really want to put members of the public into. Much better to tell them well in advance if there is a change. But happy to take questions.
Okay, I shall propose these recommendations, 2.1, 2.2, and David Harrison seconded.
So if there's no questions, I'll go to the vote. So all those in favour? And that's carried, Chair.
Right. Come to item 14, exclusion of press and public. The committee is invited to consider making the following resolution to exclude the public and press in respect of the next item in view of the likely disclosure of exempt information. Resolve that in accordance with the provisions of section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. This committee is, yeah.
Yeah. So if